Welcome to the Top 200 podcast with your host, Herschel Ford.
Alright, we ready to go? What's up, everybody? This is Herschel Ford from High School Top 200, and welcome back to the Monday morning meeting. This is going to be kind of a short one. Not that there's anything, because there's not much thing to talk about. It's just because I've got some things to do and I've got to go to work soon, and I don't want to be tired, so I have to have like a nana nap before I work from 12 to 8 in the morning. That's pretty much all my shifts, and so this is going to be pretty short. I'll try and get through some things that I've been thinking about, and I think some things that are changing what's going on with High School Top 200. I also want to talk about the importance of the games that were in the holidays and kind of how it changes the landscape of I guess the rankings, and how other competitions stack up against others, and also how important these games are in terms of playing for your competition, in terms of representing your competition, not playing for, but representing your competition, and sort of setting that standard, and all these crossover games and how important they actually are, and sort of not saying that we're just playing and if we lose and that's fine, because it isn't. I mean, like, I'm one of those guys that plays because I want to do my best and I want to win, and I've always kind of been like that as well. And so to me, every game matters. It doesn't really matter what it is. I want to play for that crest on my chest and play the best that I can, kind of thing. Also, I want to talk about what's going on with region selections, because by the time the next holidays come up, everything should be finished in terms of competition games, all that kind of stuff, and so we'll get into some of that. But what to sort of look for in rep selections and region selections for your region, like your Chiefs, Blues, Crusaders, all that kind of stuff. Also, because there's only a few more weeks left of ranking, pretty much when this term ends, rankings also end as well. Getting into the finals, because there's not much more after that. I will still do player rankings because there are rep teams, and most of those players are in the rankings are also in rep teams, and you get some new ones, and I'll be able to see, and I think that's probably like the most important thing, is that I'll be able to see guys that I may have questions about in terms of how they stack up against bigger, better players, even though they've been sort of tearing up in their competition. It's different, and I always kind of call it the lions, seeing who the real lions are, and who all the cats are. It kind of divides them. Is that everybody's a lion at their school because they're killing everyone that's at their school, but once they get into the rep season and into rep teams and trainings, it's like you find out who the real lions are. And so, and all the rest are kind of just pussycats, to be honest. And so I guess that's kind of up to you, really, to decide what you are. It's like, doesn't matter what school, and to me, it doesn't matter what school you come from. I mean, there's been a lot of guys from smaller schools that have come and, torn people up. It's not, doesn't really matter what school you come from, but it's once you get into rep selections and into reps, especially when it comes down to region rep teams like your Chiefs, Crusaders, and Blues, and that kind of stuff, where you rank and where you, if you're able to stand in those teams, that's where all that kind of discussion comes off. So first off, like, I mean, I don't really like talking about this too much, but because there are new people to this page and to this website and to the concept of this, a lot have been asking, especially within the last 2 weeks, they've been asking, why I am important, or why does you going, affect anything, or why does New Zealand Rugby Union have to have you which are all legitimate questions. I mean, because if you just don't know, you just don't know. But think of it like this. So I do the rankings from year 11s, or pretty much, your year 11s, year 11s, year 12s, and year 13 players, right? And I do it based on my own opinion. I do it based on what games I see of you, or what reports come back from coaches, rep coaches, selectors, scouts, agents, things like that, sports directors, and all the information I get, I make my judgment based on that. Now, I have a pretty fair idea by the time you hit year 12, what you're kind of going to be like in year 13, and then where you're kind of going to go when it comes to club rugby, and if you're going to push on. I kind of have a fair idea based on how you've tracked from year 11 to year 12 and year 12 to year 13, and based on that movement, how much you're going to go on. Now, I'm not saying that I'm going to predict where you end up. I just got this idea of myself, because you made a little jump from here to there and a little jump from there to there. You're also going to be a little jump because you kind of maxed out on, say, like your height and your weight and your size, things like that, and then how that transitions over into club rugby and New Zealand rugby in terms of what they expect that position to be. Because when you have a position, New Zealand rugby likes their position players to look a certain way, to be a certain height, weight, type. That's why all of our players kind of are built the same in terms of what we're looking for. Like, we're not going to get a big second five and then short centre, because we don't have those. Everyone that's picked are all kind of the same height. Even in terms of our wingers, like our wingers are all kind of big, strong, explosive guys. Explosive in terms of like speed and quickness and footwork and things like that. Like if you take Sevu, Caleb, Lester, Will, and Geordie, all those kind of guys in terms of running types and skills are all kind of the same. Like, they're not kicking guys, they're not, tactical kicking guys or anything like that. They're not passing, playmaking guys for other people. They're all kind of attacking, dynamic guys. And then even when it comes down to defense, they all kind of do the same thing, with, I guess, Sevu being a bit more physical with his big hits that he does, but they're all kind of the same. So like when New Zealand look at players, they all have a type of what they want, and then they pick to that. So like if you don't fall into those dimensions that they want in terms of players, you can pretty much say that you're not going to go on through there. That's just kind of how it is. It's not right, it's not wrong. And I mean, well, everyone right now is probably going, well, the All Blacks are losing, so they must be wrong. Kind of, sort of, whatever. But at the same time, that's just what they look for. Now, I take it from that and go, well, New Zealand doesn't really look for guys like him. It doesn't mean that he's not good. It just means that New Zealand doesn't look for guys like him. So where do they go? They get stuck in club rugby, and they tear it up in club rugby, and then they might make ITM Cup, but they probably won't make Super Rugby because they're not looking for that. The Super Rugby is your year-round trial for the All Blacks, but they're not going to trial guys that they don't really want to look at. So what happens to them? They go 21, 22, 27, 30, and then they've had this strong club rugby presence and this sort of at the back of their mind grind to get making the Super Rugby, but they're struggling with the thought of like, hey, I'm killing it here. Why am I getting picked up? Club coaches don't know what to say. Selecting coaches don't know what to say either, because they know that breaking that hard news to them, they kind of don't want to give it to you. Well, I'm fine with it. I'll tell you. I don't care. I'll tell you because I know you need to get on with your life. And if it's not here in New Zealand, you got to kick rocks and go somewhere else and find that other gem somewhere else, because they're going to appreciate you more. That's my mindset about it. It's like I'm not saying, oh, you're not good enough, stop trying. I'm saying you're not good enough here because I'm not looking for you. But if you go to Fiji, or if you go to Japan and you're Fijian, go to Japan. If you go to France, if you go to England, I was like, or you go to Italy, it's like, go there. You're going to be much appreciated there. They're going to love what you can bring that New Zealand's not missing. And they're not missing because they're not looking. They're not looking because they don't like that type of player. So they're not going to pick you. That's my mindset about it, right? So, taking all of that kind of stuff into it, think about it where I am selecting and I'm ranking kids from the ages of 14 to 18. Now, if I was to, and this is kind of what it's looking like it's going to happen, if I stop working, if I leave New Zealand, if I stop doing top 200 and I end up doing it for another country, or if I end up still doing a top 200 but for another company in another country with a different demographic of people that I deal with now, I am going to have to give them the information that I have for the players that I watch. And who do I watch? I watch 15, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 year olds, right? Now, for example, if I was working for someone in Japan, let's say Japan, they would go, who are the best players that we should go for? I go, oh, well, that's easy. I've got this guy from Palmy Boys. I've got this guy from Kings. There's this kid from Nelson. I've got this boy from Southland Boys. And then I've got this other boy from Shirley. And I was like, those are the 5 ones that I think that if you go for, you'll be able to get a lot of value out of them, because this is kind of how I see them tracking on. And Japan may say, cool, what can we offer them? And I would say scholarships and opportunities, things like that, right? Now, I can get to the parents because I'm working for myself. I'll just call up the parents. I'll find a number and I go, hey, my name is Herschel Fruin. I work for blah, 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 whatever. And they're interested in your son. And this is what they can offer you, your son. And they can offer him free scholarships, they offer him free accommodation, free flights, academy contract for 3 years, living in Japan, studying in Japan, things like that. Now, what happens there is that you may say, okay, that's fine, whatever. But let's say I did 10 kids. 10 kids at 14, 15, 10 kids in year 11, 10 kids in year 12, and 10 year 13s. 30 kids every single year. Now, when you get opportunities like that, let's say Japan, France also picks up on it, and they go, okay, well we want 10. Who are the other 10? And the special thing about what I bring is that I can go straight to the parents. I can go straight to the players. I don't have this lock on myself. Usually what happens is that parents ask the coaches, hey, what do we do about this? Most coaches are going to go, oh, don't do that. That's all lies. That's rubbish. That's blah, blah, blah. Then the opportunity's gone. Now, the coach's side of it is like most coaches, I'm not saying all of them, but I'm saying most coaches will go, oh no, I need him to stay here because he's good for our team and we need him to grow up in here. Whereas for me, I'm like, well, I don't care about coaches. I don't care about that. All I care about is the players and the parents. Not the fact that they take these opportunities, but at least that they hear it and they have an opportunity to make the decision for themselves, taking in all of the information that they can get, and that I can give them. I just care about the player. That's my standpoint and always been my standpoint on stuff. But let's say I work for 3 countries. Let's say it was Japan, France, and England. That's 30 players in year 11, 30 players in year 12, 30 players in year 13, every single year. Let's say I did something like that. Because I'm employed by other people outside of New Zealand. Do you know how that would gut out the talent here in New Zealand? Do you know how bad that would be for New Zealand rugby if I was working for somebody else? And it may sound like I sound like arrogant, like, oh, you hold the key. It's like, no, I don't hold the key, but I'm an important part of this position because I've been doing this for 8 years, on my 9th one this year. I don't get paid by New Zealand Rugby. I don't get paid by anybody, but I am in the best intentions for your son. Nothing else. I love the Chiefs. I don't care. It's not about them. I love the All Blacks even more. It's not about them either. Because those things last forever. Your boy's career is only 3 years, maybe. Now all I want them to do is get the opportunities, to hear the opportunities and make a decision based on everything that the information that's out there, for them to go, all right, son, sit down, let's talk about this and let's decide on what happens. Instead of some coach, director, agent, manager, whatever, selector going, oh no, that's all rubbish, don't listen to that, don't listen to that, because they want you to stay here. I don't want you to stay here. I don't want you to go. I want you to make the decision for yourself. Now, if I was working for other people outside, the information is going to get to you. And if you see what they make overseas, if you see the opportunities that they're getting overseas, think about it. If there was a kid that I moved when he was 15, with a chance that he can move his family over in 3 years, with a chance that he can also play for that country because he's now a part of that country, not move over when he's 19, but he's going to be there for their under 20s. For them. That's a different dynamic. That's kind of like what we do here with Samoans and Tongans and Fijians. Now they're going to have all these different options if I'm gone. And the difference is, why don't they just do it now with the list that I put out there? Why can't they just go in there, blah, blah, blah? It's because they can't talk to parents. The parents don't trust them. A lot of parents trust me and what I say. Because I have no thing in this, you know. The kids that I've helped, I don't get money back from that. Like, I don't take from their earnings. I don't take from their earnings. I take from the agents. I take from the scouts. I take from the organization and the clubs. That's how I get my money, not from the parents. There's a big difference between that stuff. Because I'm not charging parents. I'm charging that club. I'm charging that franchise. I'm charging those people. So my money doesn't come out of their one. My money comes out of those guys, that corporation. There's a big difference between that. Agents take from your cut when you're a player, not from them. Big difference. An agent takes 2%, 1%, 3%, whatever your percentage is, out of your negotiation. Not, this negotiation is yours, then I'll get my 3% from something else. This is your negotiation, I'm taking my 3% from what you made. Big difference. That's why I'm important to these parents. That's why these parents trust me a lot. I have nothing to gain from these kids at all. Because I don't want to take from their money, because their career is short. Not that club. Not that agency. Not the corporation that's there. I'm taking from them. And I tell them, oh, no. I'm not taking it out of his money. That money that we just signed there is theirs. You're paying me out of you guys. Big difference there. Now, if I leave and I accept these offers, a lot more parents and players are going to leave. Because I'm going to be able to give them the information straight away. And that's the difference. That's the value that I have here in New Zealand Rugby in terms of what I do. Now, when I say that I'm going to stop doing top 200, I'm not saying I'm going to stop doing what I'm doing. I'm just going to be stopping top 200, the website. But I'm still going to do what I do, but for somebody else. And they're going to pay me the money. Meaning that all that information I get is that when all these other clubs actually go, oh, you actually can get to these parents? Yeah, that's the difference. Because I'm still going to be on the sideline. I'm still going to talk to parents. I'm still going to talk to, coaches and directors and stuff. And I want to help coaches too. I love the dedication that coaches and First 15 Rugby have for these kids. And if I start getting into coaches and getting coaches opportunity, I'm going to push that too. Because we have too many good coaches here that don't have opportunities to move up in their province or in the union or whatever they are. It's like, man. And there's some coaches out there that I love a lot that I really, really want to help. And I really, really just want to get them opportunities and just go, bro, what do you think about this country? What do you think about moving here? Would you think of leaving school to move over to this place? I want to do that for coaches. Because to me, they don't get enough credit for how much they bring to these players. And so if you think about it like that, the value that I have is that I can pretty much gut out a lot of players younger to go overseas and then try their hand overseas as 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds. And I mean, you may think that's rough, but if it was your son given this opportunity, it's always a different story. It's always a different situation when it's like, oh no, you think my son's great? Oh, awesome, thanks. So you think he can move to this country? They're offering him what? Those are all the things you think about instead of reading about some other kids, like he's leaving when he's 15. He's like, oh, that's too young. What are these parents doing? It's like, oh, but it's your son. It's like, oh, well, yeah, it's a great opportunity. We're really going to think about it. Always different. Always different. So, next subject. Why is, and this is the... And this is a question that the subject I was talking about with to someone just yesterday, and I was talking about how the important thing of these games right now, and crossover games are real important in terms of and I mean crossover games like crossover competition games. So if you look at King's College and Southland, right, the fact that Southland beat King's College up in Auckland in their home ground, and beat them by 10 points, you now have to look at the teams that King's College have beaten and then trust that Southland can also beat those teams. You then have to look at the teams like John McGlashan that have beaten Southland, or King's High School who have beaten Southland, and think, well, does that mean King's High School and King's College, if they had a game, King's High School that can actually come out winners of that game? A Kings and Kings matchup will be great. Kings and Kings. That would be a mean game. Then you look at someone like St. Peter's and Gisborne, right? St. Peter's winning like 45-5 or 47-5, something like that. And you look at the margin of that and go, well, if St. Peter's can do that to Gizzy, then everyone that's beating Gisborne boys if they haven't beaten them by that margin, you could say that, well, St. Peter's now have that leverage over those teams and that competition, meaning that St. Peter's could be the best in this competition, if like in the Super 8 competition, right? Now we've got to see what Hamilton Boys does with Gisborne Boys this weekend, and how much that score is. But I mean, I was told, and I haven't seen any videotape yet, and I hope I get to see it, but St. Peter's, I was told that St. Peter's could have put 60 on them. Now, if that's true or not, and if that's a possibility, then maybe St. Peter's isn't the number 3 team in the country, maybe it's number 1. Then you also have someone like Fielding and Napier Boys, right? Napier Boys winning 20-7, some scoreline like that, and then it makes you look at what happens when you say the CNI and the Super 8 going up against each other, and going, well, 20-7. That's quite a scoreline, and that looks pretty good. But then you look at St. John's Hamilton, who beat Fielding by a pretty big margin, and you go, wow. If you look at it that way, Napier can't beat St. John's, because what they put on them was way more than that. And what they've been doing throughout the year, St. John's, is running up the score on everybody. Now, if you kind of look at it that way, then you'd say, well, okay, then that means that St. John's, Hamilton Boys, and St. Peter's are really the 1, 2, and 3 of the country. Now that St. Peter's, though, if you think about it, now that they lost, right? They've lost one game this whole year, and they lost it to St. Bede's. St. Bede's just beat Christchurch Boys. Christchurch Boys was ranked number 9. St. Bede's was ranked 13. Definitely going to change that ranking. Even with Southland winning against King's College, and then they lost just on Saturday, but they only lost to the number 8 team 10-3, which then tells you, is just like, okay, Southland isn't that far behind what John McGlashan is, and John McGlashan is a legitimate top 10 team. So they are going to jump Kings. How far is that? I ranked St. Thomas higher than Nelson. St. Thomas won. And sort of by that same margin that I feel like the ranking is anyway, like within like 2 points, 3 points. And you go, wow, okay, so St. Bede's being 13, St. Thomas being 11, there's got to be that jump there as well. So, maybe St. Bede's becomes top of the table. Because you look at Kelston Boys and Tauranga Boys, who were 10 and 12, Kelston being 10, ranked number 10, and then Tauranga ranked number 12, and then they drew 26 all, which those margins between there is kind of that margin that you're looking at anyway. Is that margin of, 1 to 5 points between all those kind of teams. And they drew. Now, the good thing with St. Bede's beating St. Peter's means that you could make that argument that St. Peter's or St. Bede's is better than those teams, and that they deserve to jump up into that top 10 quite comfortably, right? Like, you would think that. You would have that feeling that, what if they can do that and they can beat St. Peter's when they come down, maybe they are just legitimately better. I mean, like, if you look at the scoring, right, because St. Bede's have also lost a game this year. And who did they lose to? Hold on, let me just look this up. St. Bede's lost to St. Thomas. Oh, that's right, St. Thomas on their first game. Which actually means then St. Thomas, because they're even at the top of the ladder now with their points, you would say St. Thomas should move up into the top 10. St. Bede's right behind them, because St. Bede's have that key win over St. Peter's, who's the number 3 team in the country, and that's their big one to show for it. It's just like, well, we've beaten St. Peter's. We've beaten St. Peter's. They're Auckland's top team right now, St. Peter's. And we've beaten them. Theoretically, hypothetically, St. Thomas can also beat St. Peter's. That's the that's the kind of line of thinking that I think at when we start looking at that kind of stuff. Now, all of that is what I'm looking at in terms of, the rankings. And rankings are finishing soon. So, with all these games left, that's what I'm going to be looking at. With all these games going on, what they've got left, that's what I'm going to be looking towards and going, okay, that's what I'm going to be looking at, is all those wins and losses, all that kind of stuff. So, in a way, if you want to kind of have this idea of like, well, I'm going to figure it out before Hirsch and see what his ones are, and then I'll match mine up with his, is that go to your competition, look at everyone's scores and how they've done it, who they've beaten, look at my rankings, look at how much they beat a certain team and go, well, this kind of matches out. And then you can kind of figure it out for yourself where it is. And really, like I've said before, this is all my opinion, right? So you could also go through the same process that I go through and go, well, this is my opinion. And it might be slightly different to mine, or it might be drastically, whatever. But that's just how I go through these thoughts. And so coming down to the end of the season, all these crossover games are going to matter. All these traditionals that they have are all going to matter. The fact that Palmy lost to King's College matters now. The fact that New Plymouth lost to Westlake Boys, even though I had Westlake Boys ranked higher, you now have to look at it and go, Westlake Boys belong in the Super 8 ranks. And where do they fall in that? Because if we can beat New Plymouth, and New Plymouth have beaten, who have they beaten? New Plymouth. And it's unfair because you may go, well, New Plymouth hasn't won much games in the Super 8. It's like, well, that's like playing a top 10 team every single game. It's not like the easiest thing to do. So this year, Sydney Plymouth even beat Silverstream. They lost 24-12 to Hamilton. They lost 33-17 to Tauranga. They lost 28-24 to Palmy. They beat Gisborne Boys 29-14. And then they just lost to Hastings 14-3. So the margins of their losses haven't been like huge losses. But then from the Westlake Boys side of it, they go, well, we fit in higher than them. So Westlake can go, well, if you lost 28-24 to Palmy, Westlake Boys is looking at that, was like, well, then we can beat Palmy. Westlake can definitely beat Auckland Grammar, and Palmy and New Plymouth Boys lost to Auckland Grammar. Westlake will be looking at New Plymouth beating Silverstream 20-17, and then they're going, well, we can beat Silverstream then. If you guys can do it, we can do it. That's kind of the attitude that you have. That's kind of the attitude that goes on. That's why someone like St. Bede's that can beat St. Peter's, and the only one that can beat them, that have beaten them this year, can hold their head up and say, well, have you guys beaten the top team in Auckland? Because we have. And not like hypothetically or theoretically you can beat them because you've beaten us, and they've only lost one game this year, and that was to St. Thomas. They could say, cool, you guys beat us, but we actually went out and beat St. Peter's. We grinded it out with them, smashing bodies and everything, and we beat them. Now, that's going to be their selling point every single game, and every single time I look at the rankings, I have to go, yeah, but they beat St. Peter's, the best team in Auckland. Then what does that mean for this team? How high can that take this team? Because that has to mean something. And I have to make sure that these wins and losses mean something. That's where like a win like John McGlashan last week beating Timaru boys by that massive margin also puts John McGlashan into the Miles Toyota championship and goes, well, if these guys are 45 points better than Timaru, everyone that has played Timaru, if you're not within that range of 45 points, you're not beating John McGlashan either. Which says that John McGlashan is probably the best team in the South Island, and at the same time, maybe a top 5 team, maybe a top 2 team, and maybe they're the ones that end up in the top 4 when it comes to nationals time. Now that there's no co-ed anymore, which is stupid. I think that's so dumb. I think it's dumb. And I don't like to call people and things dumb, but that's dumb. I think it is. Anyways, that's just that's the Monday morning meeting. We'll get back to everything that goes on. A full week of games. I'm so excited to get back to watching all these games. Send me through some games that I may have missed. The rankings will be out tomorrow. I'm going to be doing a refresh on year 11, 12s, and the top 200 rankings coming up this week. The team of the week will also be up. And yeah, so everyone keep a lookout for that. Herschel from High School Top 200. Later, ball.
Straight, Tom. That's a tear.